Hello, and welcome back to the Cinema Scoop podcast with Sam and Jordan. And today we're going to be going over sci-fi movie sequels.
In honor of Dune 2.
Yes, this will be kind of like the second films in like trilogies or series or sagas, any type of like second film in a sci-fi movie franchise.
And we're going to be putting them into a tier list. And so I've already made this tier list, and Jordan's going to kind of react to it. But just to reinforce, it's a sci-fi movies only, so no superhero movies, no fantasy movies like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter. It's just science fiction. And I've kind of had like I had a pretty big list on here. The only two movies I hadn't seen that I'm not going to put are Mad Max 2 Road Warrior and Star Trek Into Darkness. So those won't be slotted. But the first, we're basically going to go worst to best. So in the F tier, I only have one movie, and this is kind of like this movie completely failed. And it's Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. This is the 2009 sequel. I couldn't really tell you exactly what happens in this movie, but the first Transformers was pretty good. This one was just really bad, and they just became mostly really bad after that. But that was like the only one of all these movies I was like, there's kind of like nothing redeemable about it to put it any higher. So the next tier is the D tier, and I just put this as this didn't work as far as a sequel, as far as being a good movie. So I have 4 in this tier. I have Star Wars Attack of the Clones, the second movie in the prequel trilogy. I have The Lost World: Jurassic Park, which might be the worst titled sequel of any of these. Then I put Men in Black 2, and then Independence Day: Resurgence, which is obviously the sequel to Independence Day. Yeah, none of these movies are really good. We don't have to go too much into every movie, but what are your initial thoughts? I know you haven't seen some of these, but...
Yeah, so it's these 4?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like The Lost World I've watched, but I remember nothing about it. Men in Black 2, I'm pretty sure I've watched, but again, I just don't remember anything about it, which says something. The only one that I have like actual memories of watching is Attack of the Clones, and the memories I have of it are falling asleep. So I know that like the episode 1, 2, 3 saga is kind of touted as like the worst Star Wars movies. Yeah, the prequels are considered the worst, but out of the first 3, this is like my most hated. Like I actually like The Phantom Menace, and I actually like Revenge of the Sith, but I don't like Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, there's a few parts in Attack of Clones I like, but for the most part, it's pretty boring. It's like the most political. It's the most cringy romance with Anakin and Padme. Yeah, and then The Lost World, they brought back Jeff Goldblum, and then Julianne Moore is in it, and there's like randomly Vince Vaughn, but like for the most part, it's just kind of forgettable. And yeah, Men in Black 2, not much going on. They did bring back the main 2 guys, but
that's all they can say.
Yeah, then Independence Day Resurgence, they didn't really bring, or they brought Goldblum back, so this is like a double Jeff Goldblum tier, but they did not bring Will Smith into that one. The thing with sci-fi sequels is, you want them to expand the world, you want to introduce new locations, new characters, new ideas, and
like build on what you've already created.
They also have to be good. It's like you can say this is Men in Black 2, but if everything is not good or not different enough to where it makes the story progress and the characters progress, it's kind of pointless. So then we have the C tier. I got 4 movies in this tier. This is kind of like mid to average. Some people might like some of these, but so I have Predator 2, where they go to Los Angeles and they're in the concrete jungle with Danny Glover and Gary Busey. I tried to watch this last year. It's fine. It's just not anywhere as good as the first one. Same thing with RoboCop 2. This one, I mean, it's just not as good as an action movie. It's not terrible, but it does like, I think there's like a main character who's a kid that they follow around in like the actual like backdrop of what they did in the first one, where it's like anti-police state and capitalism, but this one is just like, oh, it's RoboCop again. So I didn't hate it. It was just like fine. I just would rather watch the first RoboCop. These next two I think are good, but I put them in this tier because I didn't think they were that much better. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which is from 1982. A lot of people think this is one of the best sequels. I'm really not a Star Trek guy, but they basically introduced this guy, Khan, who's the bad guy. And there's some good scenes I like. There's like a little bit of drama and suspense in some of the scenes because there's like, they're trying to understand if he's good or bad or what they should do. But I might have to revisit this one, but I didn't think it was that good. Although it was better than the first movie. And finally, we have Back to the Future Part 2. This one, again, it's pretty good. They actually go in forward in time to 2015, where which is funny in retrospect because they thought we would have flying cars, but I do like that they figure out if you like have like the sports almanac, you can just bet on sports and win lots of money. I think that's really funny.
I remember thinking that was funny.
Another one I kind of need to rewatch, and it's not bad. It's just like there's a lot of movies that we're going to talk about that are way better.
I would say like out of those last four that are in the C tier, the only one I have like opinions about is Back to the Future 2. I think most people really like Back to the Future 2. I actually preferred, weirdly, the third one where it's like a Western.
Yeah, the third one's really, I mean, it's close, but I like the third one.
I weirdly prefer the third one to the second one, and I think most people don't agree with that. But I did like Back to the Future too, because I remember watching it as a kid.
Yeah, Back to the Future as a whole, like the three movies, like I would say they're all pretty good. I like the first movie the best, but it's one of those weird franchises that they like didn't fully drive into the ground because they didn't make a fourth one or any spinoffs, and it's been like 30-40 years now, but they're still really good. Okay, so the next tier is the B tier, and these are really good, and that is The Matrix Reloaded and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is the second the first Matt Reeves Planet of the Apes, the second in that new trilogy. This one, you still have Andy Serkis. You have humans played by Gary Oldman and Kerry Russell, and Jason Clarke are kind of like the last humans trying to fend off the apes at this point. So there's some good tension, and I like that one. And then Matrix Reloaded, I've only seen once, but I was really impressed with how it took The Matrix and reloaded it. But it's set 6 months after the first movie, and they like have to go underground to like this what they call Zion, and they're like that's where the last of the humans basically are, and it's kind of interesting. But yeah, good action. But not good enough to be higher than B tier, and I don't think you've seen these two.
No.
Okay, so now we go to the A tier. This one, So what kind of distinguished these from the B tier and the other ones we've talked about is I personally think they're both really good. Some people might not like them, but I also think that whether you like them or not, they're drastically different than the first movie, which I think is at the very least ballsy and a risk, and I think it paid off for both of them. And that is Gremlins 2, The New Batch, and Star Wars The Last Jedi, Episode 8, which is technically the 8th movie, but it's technically the second movie and the sequel of the
We'll take it.
of the sequel trilogy. It's a sequel to the sequel trilogy, so I had to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can talk a little bit more about Last Jedi, but yeah, Gremlins 2, really funny. I like how they went all out on adding different gremlins and what could they look like, how could they act. I like that they're funny. I like that they sing. I like that it's basically Die Hard in a big office building, and they brought back the main cast from the first one. Just a really fun time. And it was one of the first movies to be like truly meta and owning the fact that it's ridiculous. And because, I mean, the first one's kind of ridiculous, but it's kind of more grounded in a scary Christmassy time type of movie where it's more horror-esque, but this second one is
more campy.
Yeah. And then Last Jedi, I mean, I know we both like this one really a lot. So,
yeah.
Any things you want to talk about The Last Jedi about?
Well, yeah, and Gremlins too, because I'm like a big Gremlins fan. I loved the first one and I like the second one quite a bit. So I feel like this is an adequate rating. However, if I were making this list, I would have put The Last Jedi in S tier, not A tier. It would need to be higher for me just because I think it's almost a perfect movie. Apart from like very minor tweaks I would make with it. But like, yeah, I'm like a slut for The Last Jedi. Like, I love The Last Jedi. Reylo, like, but like in a vacuum, it is a very, very, very good movie. And it's hard to say that coming off of episode 7? Mm-hmm. Like episode 7 was really, really good. And it was like really relaunched the like last 3 movies. So it's hard to follow that up. But then in the same time, like I just feel like they did such a good job. And then we don't have to talk about the third one, but they had like a really good thing going is all I'll say. And then it kind of got ruined. But I really love The Last Jedi. I would put it in S tier just because as a standalone, like it's probably one of my most rewatched Star Wars movies ever.
Yeah, I almost put it in S tier, but ultimately we'll get to it. But I wanted to put it in the tier with Gremlins 2 because I felt like maybe we like Last Jedi more, but I thought they're kind of similar in how people discuss them. But so even though that's the A tier, we have 3 more tiers to go through.
Oh, we do.
So we have the Denis Villeneuve tier, which is slightly above A tier. This is Dune Part 2 and Blade Runner 2049. We just recorded and posted our Dune 2 podcast, so go listen to that. But we both really liked it. And then Blade Runner 2049. It really takes what was, it's one of those movies that comes out 30 years after the original, and most of the time those types of movies are really bad, but visually I think this one is better than the first one. I like a lot of the side characters. I think Ryan Gosling kind of played it too much as a monotone robot hybrid guy, but ultimately I really liked the visual storytelling of Blade Runner 2049 and how it progresses the Blade Runner stuff. What did you think? I mean,
I liked it. I mean, I liked the original and I like this, but they're just like, you made a good point about like, normally however many years later when they remake something, it's not going to be very good, but this is like kind of an exception to that rule. And I like that Harrison Ford is still in it.
Yeah, I like that they brought back Harrison Ford. I think it really brings the whole movie together.
It's funny, it's actually the second sci-fi series in this list that has had to bring back Harrison Ford for a purpose. So, just saying.
All right, so now after the Denis Villeneuve tier, we have the James Cameron tier. And he's got 3 of these. He's got Avatar, The Way of Water, Aliens, and Terminator 2. And we could have potentially put Piranha 2, which was like his first movie, but that's more of a horror movie. But yeah, Avatar 2, I've talked about a lot in different episodes. I think it's incredible. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. Aliens, maybe the best action movie ever. Definitely on this list. Although there's also Terminator 2, which is also really good. I mean, James Cameron deserves his own tier. I feel like that's why all 3 of these movies are, 5 stars to me. I think it's like crazy that he was able to make 3 separate movies like these that are all sequels.
Sci-fi.
And sci-fi, and obviously Aliens. He didn't direct the first Alien movie, but that Aliens could have also been in the tier with Last Jedi and Gremlins 2, where it like took a horror or a different type of movie and turned it into something else. In this case, an action movie. I mean, it's still kind of scary, but yeah, Aliens and Terminator 2, like I could put on any day at any time. They're just like endlessly rewatchable. And what do you think about the James Cameron tier?
I
Could have
see.
put in Titanic because
Well,
it's not a sequel.
No, but I have also ashamedly never seen any of these. So
Yeah, that's on you. I mean, I've tried, but we'll have to see them soon. But
I'm
there's a reason they're in their own tiers because they're really, really good.
I think in general, I'm just like not a very sci-fi type of person. But like when a sci-fi movie is good, I really like it. But I'm either gonna hate it or love it. Like there's not like a sci-fi movie where I'm like, I feel neutral about it. Like I'm either on board or I'm off.
Yeah, you usually like the fantasy elements because of like you love Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. I will say like for sci-fi, there's sometimes where you're like, well, do I have to buy into the technology or do I have to buy into the futuristic elements of it? Yeah. And I mean, if you watch Terminator 2, like they'll specifically say, I think this is like 1997, even though it wasn't made in 91. But for the most part, Terminator 2, Aliens, Avatar, like you don't need to know the date or the time. It's just
easy onboarding.
It's like there's a lot of the Terminator stuff, especially in different movies, where you can nitpick and be confused about why, because it's a time travel based. And then even like with Avatar, it's like, okay, they went all this way to do what and to do what on this planet. But I think it's not critical that you completely understand every aspect of those movies to like buy into what they're trying to do, which is one of the things James Cameron is really good at. And then we have S tier, which is Empire Strikes Back. I just wanted to put one movie in S tier. Yeah, Empire Strikes Back, one of my favorite 10 films ever. As a film, I think it's better than Return of the Jedi, but I like Return of the Jedi more. But as far as a second movie, Empire Strikes Back, it added Yoda as a character. It added Lando Calrissian, Boba Fett. It added multiple new locations. It had a snow planet. It went more into space and like, what are the asteroids like? It went to a planet that was all gas, which, the Milky Way galaxy has a few of those, but we can't actually go there because there's nowhere to land your spaceship or whatever. But in Bespin Cloud City, they made these giant cities that just float in the gas. Like, that's cool. And like stuff like that is just like a basic, like, okay, this is on paper going to be interesting and cool. And then obviously like the story and what actually happens. One of the best twists of all time, if not the best twist of all time at the end. A great big war battle at the snow planet of Hoth. I think it's really interesting when they go to the swamp and find Yoda for the first time.
I think a lot of people forget that aren't like super into Star Wars, that like Yoda is introduced in this one.
Yeah, like the whole time you don't know if that's actually Yoda, and he's a funny puppet, and he's like doing that funny thing with the flashlight and messing with R2-D2. But I just think from a sci-fi sequel standpoint, it kept all the great things about A New Hope and added more things that are cool and I think better. And I think that's like kind of where we're getting at with this whole tier list thing is a lot of these movies, they're either trying to progress the story or progress certain elements of characters or the broader sense of the world. And I think the better films do that well, and the worst movies that we talked about earlier either don't care about that and are just like, oh, this was the first one was good, let's put the number 2 behind it and make it again.
Yeah, like a carbon copy.
But I think with it being a trilogy and it was mostly planned out, which is why I think the second film in that trilogy, Empire Strikes Back, is the best.
Yeah, I like Empire Strikes Back too. I mean, I like the original, all 3 of the original 3, but I specifically like this one quite a bit too. I think that's like a good place to put it too, is S tier. Although I would maybe argue if you had a very rigid 4 tiers that like, I would argue that Blade Runner, 2049, and Dune 2 could like exist in the same tier. But I see why you did it the way you did it.
Yeah, I thought, well, I think Last Jedi is a better movie than, both of the Denis Villeneuve movies, but I thought because they did the same, it was by the same director, it was funny to put them in their own tier. And then with the James Cameron, like, I could have put all 3 of those in the S tier. That was the other thing is, like, if I was just going to put 5 stars in the S tier, that would have been like 5 or 6 movies.
Yeah.
Which I didn't really want to do. So I was trying to figure out a way to make it more interesting and split them up.
Differentiated.
But yeah, so I didn't see the second Mad Max movie from the 80s, and then they redid Star Trek in 2009 with J.J. Abrams, which I did see that, but then they made a second film called Star Trek Into Darkness, which I did not see, but I heard that wasn't as good, so... But yeah, that's my tier list. I hope you enjoyed. And
thanks for listening.
Bye.